For decades, they were the world's most successful and peaceful military partnership. The United States and Canada, neighbors by geography and allies by choice, created a bond that was the envy of the world. But that partnership is now being tested like never before. Canada, facing a far more unpredictable and dangerous world, has just unveiled a new, assertive defense policy. The goal is to reclaim its own sovereignty and beef up its military might. This has predictably sparked a furious reaction from a familiar voice, former U.S. President Donald Trump, who has a long and very loud history of calling allies delinquent. So, is Canada really breaking its pacts with the U.S.? Today we're breaking down Canada's radical new defense strategy, why this is all happening now, and what it means for the alliance that has secured a continent for over half a century. Section 1. The old way isn't working. To get how big a deal this is, you have to understand what the U.S.-Canada alliance used to be. For over 60 years, the absolute bedrock of this relationship was NORAD, the North American Aerospace Defense Command. It's the world's only binational military command, a seamless partnership where Canadian and American officers work shoulder to shoulder to watch the skies and seas. This cooperation was so deep, the border felt less like a line and more like a seam holding a continent together. But the world has changed. The security that both nations once took for granted is gone. Climate change is literally melting the Arctic, opening up new, contested shipping routes and exposing a massive, vulnerable northern border. At the same time, aggressive rivals are challenging the global order, and new technologies are rewriting the rules of war. In this new, more dangerous world, the Canadian government decided the old way of doing things just wasn't going to cut it. In April 2024, it released a policy update called Our North, Strong and Free, a renewed vision for Canada's defense. This wasn't just a fresh coat of paint, it was a fundamental rethinking of Canada's place in the world. It was a signal that Canada needed to become more resilient and more capable of standing on its own 2 feet. So, what's actually in this new strategy? Our North, Strong and Free is Canada's answer to a world in chaos. The policy lays out a plan to modernize the Canadian Armed Forces, with a particular focus on its most important defense relationship with the United States. The number one priority, as the name suggests, is the Arctic. For years, experts have warned that Canada's claim to the North was on thin ice, with aging infrastructure and a barely there military presence. Meanwhile, Russia and China have been aggressively expanding their own footprints in the region. This new policy is a direct response, calling for new northern operational support hubs for a year-round military presence and modernized surveillance systems to see threats coming. A huge part of this is the $38.6 billion earmarked over 20 years just to modernize NORAD. But it's not just about the Arctic. The plan also commits to acquiring new advanced air-to-air missiles for its fighter jets and new tactical helicopters. It's a broad effort to strengthen the Canadian military across the board. However, there's one number that's causing all the drama: defense spending. Despite these new investments, Canada's spending is projected to reach just 1.76% of its GDP by 2030. And while that's a huge jump for Canada, it still falls short of the 2% target agreed upon by NATO allies, a target that has become a flashpoint for one man in particular. Donald Trump has never been subtle about his feelings on NATO spending. He's spent years calling allies delinquent and nations who don't hit the 2% target freeloaders. His sharpest jabs have often been aimed at his northern neighbor. In his view, Canada was just about the lowest payer in the alliance. He's publicly complained that the U.S. was forced to protect them with our military, which is unfair, and has even tied the idea of making Canada the 51st state directly to its military spending. For many Canadians, these aren't just insults. They're seen as threats to their sovereignty. So when Canada announced a new defense plan that, despite major investments, still wouldn't hit that 2% target for years, it was guaranteed to provoke him. From Trump's perspective, this is just another example of an ally refusing to pay its fair share while America foots the bill for continental defense. This sets the stage for a major collision, where U.S. demands for payment clash with Canada's new push for capability. Look, we love digging into these complex global stories. If you do too, and you want to stay informed on how these power dynamics affect you, take a second to hit that subscribe button. It genuinely helps us keep making these deep dives. So, what are the deeper forces at play here? For Canada, this shift is driven by a profound sense of insecurity. The world feels more dangerous, and the reliability of its closest ally, the United States, is no longer a given. After years of unpredictable political tensions and trade wars, many in Canada started to see the US as a less predictable partner. This shift is about building what officials call resilience. The goal is to have a military that is capable of acting on its own, if needed, especially in the strategically vital Arctic. It's not about abandoning the US, but about being a stronger partner. In fact, the new policy stresses deeper collaboration on NORAD modernization, and even opens the door for Canada to join the US ballistic missile defense system, something it had long refused to do. From the US perspective, the issue is simpler: burden sharing. There is a strong belief in Washington, especially among Trump and his supporters, that wealthy allies like Canada are not pulling their weight. The concern is also practical. NORAD's effectiveness depends on both countries having modern, connected military gear. The command is undergoing a massive upgrade to counter new threats like hypersonic missiles. But if Canada doesn't keep pace with its investments, for example, if its costly review of the F-35 fighter jet deal leads to delays or cuts, the US fears it will create a critical gap in North America's defenses. US officials have warned that shortfalls in Canadian capabilities could force America to take on even more of the burden, which could change the very nature of the NORAD partnership. This isn't just a private squabble between neighbors. These tensions have ripple effects across the globe. First, it puts a strain on the Five Eyes intelligence alliance: the US, UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. That partnership is built on absolute trust, and public feuds between its two closest members can erode that trust, creating openings for rivals. Second, it highlights the deep cracks within NATO. The 2% spending debate has been a sore spot for years. Canada's failure to meet the target, even with a new plan, reinforces the narrative that some allies aren't taking their commitments seriously. This weakens the alliance's unity when it's facing down a newly aggressive Russia. Third, it directly impacts the growing competition in the Arctic. A less than united US-Canada front makes it easier for countries like Russia and China to assert their own claims in the resource-rich North. If the two pillars of North American defense aren't in lockstep, it weakens their ability to deter competitors. Despite all the heated political rhetoric, cooperation continues on the ground. Military commanders at NORAD insist that, day to day, the mission to defend the continent is as strong as ever. But the political foundation supporting that mission is definitely shaking. So, is this the end of the world's most successful military partnership? Not exactly. But it is a messy, complicated renegotiation happening in real time. The era of quiet, unquestioned unity is over. Canada is charting a new course, one aimed at becoming a more capable and self-reliant partner in a world it no longer sees through the same lens as its neighbor. The United States, in turn, is tired of footing the bill and is demanding more from its allies. Their shared continent and intertwined economies mean these two nations will always be partners. But the nature of that partnership is changing. It's becoming more transactional and a lot more uncertain. The old, easygoing trust is being replaced by a more hard-headed, "what have you done for me lately?" relationship. The world's most successful military alliance is being stress-tested, and its future has never been less clear. Is Canada's move a smart and necessary step toward being a stronger ally? Or is it a risky gamble that could backfire? Let us know what you think in the comments below.